at all. You guys see that?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Sure can.
Is it in presentation mode or did it swap view?
No, I see it in your nice little background.
Okay,
What I'm looking at.
now let me let everybody in. All righty. Is that everybody? Yep, I believe so. All right. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you all for joining us for today's a month of service presentation of property taxes, exemptions, and payment options. My name is Nia Murray. I work as the programs coordinator with Neighborhood Recovery Community Development Corporation, and we are one of the partners in the a month of service collaboration. Also included, we have the City of Houston's Department of Neighborhoods, Lone Star Legal Aid, Houston Volunteer Lawyers, Texas Legal Services Center, Harris County Attorney's Office, and Earl Carl Institute. And joining us today for our presenting partners with the Harris Central Appraisal District and the Harris County Tax Assessor Collector's Office, we have Ms. Mabel Menifee as well as Ms. Shay Pinkowski, who will be presenting the information for you all today about property taxes and exemptions and payment options. We have a couple of other representatives from the appraisal district who will be introduced shortly, who will be also joining us in monitoring the chat. But to just to give you guys a quick little background, a month of service is a collaboration of all 9 of our organizations coming together on we used to be monthly, but now every other monthly basis, providing information and resources to the community relative to asset building, asset protection, the maintaining of generational wealth, and community empowerment. And one of those sessions within this series or the collaboration is the property tax information. We know that there are a lot of underserved communities that are out there who do not have access to a lot of resources, to a lot of information, who don't know where to go for available services. So we decided to collaborate several years ago in an effort to create a larger impact and to get as much information out to the communities that we all serve as much as we possibly can. Let me say the most up to date and most accurate information. There is a lot of misinformation that's out there. People do rely on a lot of social media sites and things like that um, to get their information. However, a lot of it is not, pretty accurate or not accurate as it relates to the state of Texas. There are a lot of blanket statements that are kind of put out there for a lot of people that don't necessarily apply to us here. So do know that the information that you do receive from us today, it's not just relative to the city of Houston or to Harris County, but also surrounding counties around and throughout the state as well. The processes are pretty much the same. The locations where you may go to, depending on the jurisdiction or the area that you are in, may be a little bit different. But otherwise, it's pretty much all the same across the board for the state of Texas. So we want to welcome you all and thank you all for joining us today. This is your opportunity to ask whatever questions that it is that you have related to the particular topic about property taxes or exemptions and payment options or payment plans that you have. If you have other questions outside of the scope of this, we will kind of direct you into the area that you may need to go to or provide you with some other context or contact information for other people. But we want to make sure that we actually stay on topic for today. Again, we will have some people that will be monitoring the chat and answering your questions in your chat. However, we will go over a lot of those questions at the end because a lot of people don't monitor the chat, even though you may have some of the same questions. So I will go through and kind of read aloud some of those questions so that they can get addressed on, allowed for everybody else to actually hear as well. So you'll be surprised as to how many people have the exact same kind of questions or need a little bit more clarity about something that was discussed here today. So please feel free to either type your question into the chat, or you can raise your hand and unmute yourself at the end of the presentation and ask your questions directly. Do note that we record our session as well as broadcast live on our social media platforms. So we want to do our best to try to protect your privacy as best as we possibly can. So we do ask that you try to keep your questions to be as general as you can. And if you have something more specific as it relates to your personal issue, that you reach out directly to the presenters or ask the folks in the chat, and they'll be able to direct you as to where to go or how to get more personal one-on-one information about your particular situation. So do keep that in mind. And if you are joining us on our social media channels on YouTube or what have you, I am monitoring that as well. So feel free to type your question in the comment section there, and I'll make sure that it also gets addressed at the end of the presentation as well. So with that being said, we're going to go ahead and move right on into our introductions, and we're going to get started with the presentation. So Ms. Shea, why don't we have you introduce yourself first, and then Ms. Mabel, you can introduce Tawana and Anaya and Ania. Anaya. Am I saying her name correctly? I'm sorry if I don't, because my name is Nia. So, a lot of people, they mispronounce it all the time. So if I said that incorrectly, then I do apologize in advance. So go ahead, Shay.
No worries. My name always gets mispronounced too, which is wild because it's on every lotion bottle imaginable. But hello, my name is Shay Pinkowski, and I am here with the Office of Annette Ramirez. We are the Harris County Tax Assessor Collector's Office, and we'll be giving you some information about your property taxes, when they become due, how you can make your payments, as well as, some information about some other options that you might just not be aware of. But super excited to be here and answer some questions and be able to assist you guys in case you have anything that you would like to know more about. Again, as Ms. Nia has said before, please don't give your personal information online. If it's something that you need specific answers for, I'm happy to give contact information at the end of my presentation to make sure that you can reach out to us directly and, avoid that. But super excited to be here and to be able to answer some questions today. I'm going to go ahead and pass it on to Ms. Mabel, and she'll be able to go ahead and roll into her introductions and her presentation. Thank you so much.
All right.
All
Ms.
right.
Mabel.
All right. Let's see. Good afternoon, everyone. It appears my audio is working. Hopefully my video will be as well. My name is Mabel Menifee, and I'm here today with a couple of my colleagues from HCAT, Tawana Nelson, as well as Anaya. Now I'm doubting what I had Lade, but just know that these two ladies are in our professionals within our exemptions department, and since the Texas Tax Code, which is about 600 pages thick, and also about 2/3 of that deals with various exemptions. We are very fortunate to have them on because they are the experts. They deal in it each and every day. So I want to go ahead and start with just kind of welcoming you again. And also I want to mention that there may be a few of you out there who might have some specific questions about, since we are in the middle of the protest season, you may have some questions about maybe perhaps you're waiting on your hearing. We do not have a residential appraiser with us today because today is a very heavy hearings day. We're in the middle of that season, so most of them are somewhere here in the building participating in protest hearings. However, if you have a specific question about that, we can always try to get an answer for you and get back to you. So we'll be happy to do that. But we're going to focus on the process, talk about your rights to protest. Hopefully, if you have protested in the past, you've been successful, and if not, just keep all of this in mind for next year. So if I'm going to go ahead and show my presentation, which I do hope is out here.
Miss Menifee, I'm here
Oh,
for
hi.
the residential department.
Oh, luckily, oh, goody. We do have a representative from our residential property division, Herman Bro, who is going to be listening in too. So we have experts from those two departments that I think that you guys will be mostly interested in. And I'm going to try to share my screen again, and it's not, let's see. Let me go ahead and open it up again. So, okay. Share. There we go. And yeah. One see that. Like that, and now we go. All right, how is that? Can you guys see it?
No, ma'am, Miss Mabel, not yet.
Okay, it's showing on my screen. Let's see. I do apologize.
It's loading. There it
Oh,
goes. And just put it in presentation mode.
okie dokie. All right.
Yes, ma'am. You're all good to go.
Okay, I have some sort of AI interference that has taken over my computer, you guys. So now, how's that?
Yep, yep, you just switched it. It was
Did I
fine
just
a minute
switch
ago.
it?
You just
Okay, I'm so sorry. All right.
no, you had it. You just closed it. You just need to swap view.
Oh, I thought it, okay. Now?
It's loading. Okay, now go up and just swap to your display settings and swap view.
Okay. All right. Are we there yet?
No, ma'am.
It's showing on my screen. This screen. Okay, let's see. How about now?
Still the same. I know you're using two screens. Did you choose the right screen when you did the share? Because you had it a minute ago. It was fine. And then you swapped it. Undo your screen share.
Okay.
Okay, now choose the presentation that's already full screen.
Okay. All
Thank
right.
you all for your patience while we're getting this
How's
together here.
that?
That's okay.
Is it up now?
No, ma'am, not yet.
Oh, all right. How about now?
Did you go back to Zoom and do share screen?
No. I do apologize.
We're gonna get it together. Then that means somebody really need to get this information. That's something stopping you from getting it out. So that's all right.
I do apologize, my people, that it share.
It's loading. I see Zoom. We're on your Zoom notes. Zoom my notes. We see your Zoom screen.
Okay. How about, has it loaded?
Yeah, but we're back on your presentation mode. I mean the presenter mode.
And that's what I keep hitting, and I'm gonna hit swap presenter mode.
And there you go. You're
And
good.
there, I don't know what, but anyway, Glad to be here again. And just in case you've forgotten while we were having these technical difficulties, I'm Mabel with the Harris Central Appraisal District. We're going to be talking about an overview for property taxes, what the appraisal district's role is in the Texas property tax system, as well as the importance of having exemptions, making sure you have those that are available. And I'm here with my two colleagues, Tawana Nelson, as well as Anila Day from Exemptions. And also joining us today is Herman Bro, who's a senior appraiser in our residential property division. So they're going to be in the chat working, helping to answer questions as we go over the presentation. And we're going to be talking HCAD's role. We'll be talking about HCAD's role. And then once I'm done, we are going to switch over to the Harris County Tax Assessor Collector's Office to talk about the collections process, because that's a separate process within a separate process within the property tax system within the state of Texas. So just to go ahead and get started. Just that you guys know, I'm going to go over some basics at first. Like for instance, everyone knows one of the reasons Texas we have property taxes play a more outsized role here in the state of Texas is because there's no state income tax. They like to brag about we're a state with no income taxes. However, filling in that gap for many of the local services is property taxes. So that's one of the reasons it's very important to kind of learn a little bit about the system and how that works. Particularly if you're new to Harris County or Texas. So here in Harris County, speaking of, we have over 600 taxing entities. Depending on where you live, you probably pay to about 4 or 5, but it just sort of depends on where you live as to which ones you pay for. If you live in the county, everyone pays county taxes. However, your school district may be different, or you may have other special service districts. We are the third largest county in the nation. And that's just one of the other things that kind of complicates the property tax system here in Texas, being the third largest county, and we appraise annually. There's also a little thing called we have no zoning in Houston and Harris County in most areas, so that is one of the challenges that HCAD faces as it seeks to appraise property annually. It's important to know that a lot of people think that HCAD is part of the state. I'm sorry, a part of the county. We're one of the county divisions. We are, however, a subunit of the state of Texas. And there is an appraisal district in each and every county that appraises property, but we are overseen by the state, and the agency generally that does that is the Texas Comptroller's Office. However, as you all probably are aware, with each legislative session, there may be changes made to the Texas Tax Code and various property laws. Again, our role basically as an appraisal district is to appraise all the property in Harris County, whether that's residential, commercial, agricultural, industrial, or the business personal property. And the appraisal districts are required to do so each year and to get as close to 100% of market value. And we do so each year as of January the 1st. Now, what does that mean? Basically, it means that whatever the condition of the property was on January the 1st, that's going to be the date of appraisal for that year. So, for instance, if you live in a home and say you have a fire or something, or something happens to damage that property on January the 5th, it's still going to be valued the way it was on January the 1st. If, however, a year rolls around, January the 1st, and you have not made any improvements or corrected the damage, then that's when you might see a lower value because of that damage. There are some exceptions to that, but generally that's how a property is appraised. We also administer exemptions. Exemptions essentially are the discounts that people can receive on their property if it is their primary residence. And then, of course, each year we have to, by a certain time of the year, usually in August, certify the appraisal rolls. So what does that mean? That means that we can tell the all of the taxing jurisdictions, your school districts, your municipal governments, City of Houston, etc., that this is the this is the tax roll for this year, the expected amount within a certain percentage rate. Uh, and so that allows those taxing jurisdictions in August and September to go ahead and set their budgets. They're busy planning their budgets right now, but once they get that certified appraisal roll from the appraisal district, that allows them to move forward in terms of setting the budgets for that year. They'll know whether that the revenue that coming in from property taxes is going to cover their budget, whether they need to increase their tax rate a little bit, or whether they actually can reduce it. The other thing that we do at HCAD is, because we are the only agency that jurisdictions depend on for that tax roll, as opposed to when there was a time when each and every taxing jurisdiction did their own appraisals. We now do that one appraisal that they use. So that's designed to try to keep the system fair, so that politics doesn't necessarily play into it, or as well as other issues. Now, HCAD is overseen by a chief appraiser. We call him the chief appraiser. He's kind of like the CEO of HCAD, and we also have a 9-member administrative board. 3 of those members are actually elected by you, the public. We are, again, I mentioned we are required to be at 100% of market value as we appraise property. We'll talk about market value in a minute. We do so by something called mass appraisal, a process called mass appraisal, which is based the appraisal system, which is based on sales, or in terms of what the market is doing. And also, you might want to ask, well, who keeps check on us? And then so the state conducts a biennial property value. They do their own every couple of years to ensure that we are in compliance with what their findings are. So that's done every couple of years, and we are required to be in a certain. We're usually within 2 or 3% of what their findings also provide. Okay, so here in Harris County, as I mentioned before, we have over 600 taxing jurisdictions, and that includes 1.9 million parcels of land here in Harris County. One of the things that you may know us most by is, of course, the annual value notice that you get each year if you are a homeowner or you are soon to be one. That annual value notice usually comes out in April. Looks something like this. It's going to give you something called your appraised value and something called and then your market value. It's important to keep in mind the market value is what HCAD determines. Your appraised value is actually going to be based on your exemptions that you may have, how long you may have had them in place, as well as the 10% cap that you have on your property with the homestead exemption. Important to remember that the appraised value is what your taxes are calculated on, minus the exemptions. The market value, again, is what HCAD determines, and that's the value at which a property would sell for to a willing buyer on the open market. All right, and then again, just a quick look at that appraisal notice that you get from us. One thing I want to point out, keep this in mind if you're planning to protest in future years, is that when you get the notice, there's something on the front of it that is your unique iFile number on that notice. That iFile number is what you would use to set up your account, and then provide and do your protest online, as well as provide the information that would be needed to complete that process. So it's a convenient way to do so, and so it's a very unfortunate when at 8 o'clock, at 5 p.m. on the day before the deadline for filing your protest, someone may not be able to find their iFile number. There are other ways that you can protest, but it's important to keep that notice so that you will have that I-file number. On page 2, flip the page on that notice, on that appraisal notice, and it also contains helpful information on the back, which is what we provide information on what your land is, the value of the land, as well as the value of what we call the improvement. One thing I want to mention when we use the term improvement is a term that was given to us to describe what sits on top of the land. A lot of people think that it means what improvements they have actually made, like whether they've done a remodel or they've added something. No, the improvement value, when it comes to your valuation notice, simply means the dwelling or whatever is sitting on top of the land. You're also on that back page going to get the previous year's appraised value. And you're also going to see the specific taxing jurisdictions that you pay to. For this one in particular, you can see where this property owner lives in Houston ISD. They support the Houston Community College, now called Houston City College, city taxes, as well as hospital district, the education department, etc. So those are their specific taxing jurisdictions. It also shows what the amount of the exemptions they may have had for the previous year. So that's just sort of an idea to help people consider, estimate what their property tax may be coming up. They don't know for sure yet, but that gives them a reference in order to sort of help gauge what they might be. In terms of what determines your property value, it basically is the condition of the property, maybe perhaps some of the amenities that you have, and then, of course, what are properties similar to yours selling for in your particular neighborhood? And we do have it split up by neighborhoods to have those specific characteristics sort of all grouped into that specific neighborhood. One of the reasons we do encourage people, if you want to protest, keep in mind that HCAD's appraisal is specifically an opinion of value. We are looking at your home based on what the market is doing around it with similar properties, but you may, because you live in that home, you are the expert. No one knows your home like you do. You may have certain reasons why you do to disagree with that value in terms of perhaps your home is not in the condition to sell as most people would have a home to sell when they're putting it on the market. Maybe you have maintenance issues or some other things that you would want to bring to HCAD's attention in protesting. You do have that right in terms of the market value. As I mentioned before, is your value consistent with recent property sales in your area? Perhaps you know some examples where that is not the case. The other thing you can also protest on is equity. The two main features you would protest on: market value and equity. Equity is something that are your similar homes in your neighborhood valued more or less the same. And then again, as I mentioned, do you have those deferred maintenance issues or hidden defects that in appraising your property based on sales around you, HCAD may not know about. So if you have the opportunity to bring that to the appraisal district's attention when you file that protest. And some of the things that you might want to provide include collecting evidence for your protest. Maybe you have some comparable sales in your area that are different from what we have. You're welcome to bring those. That's part of the protest process. Perhaps you have some repair estimates for some of the things that you need to have done to your house in order to get it up to par to sell for what some of the other homes are selling for. You can provide those repair estimates in your protest. It's always helpful to do that with photos, bringing photos as well as repair estimates, and then perhaps also providing information about some of the hidden defects that you may have. Maybe you've had a leak in the wall and you you're going to have to tear out sheetrock or whatever. Perhaps in some cases you might have a foundation issues. Those are things that can all be part of a protest. And because we're such a large county, we've been working over the years to try to provide some easier ways for people to protest so that they don't have to come out here to HCAD to do so, which was the way it used to be done largely in the past. So what are some of those? So of course you can always submit that paper form, mail that back in that comes with your value notice. And you can also do it online through iFile. iFile is one of the reasons I mentioned that iFile number being so important. It allows you to do it online, and you don't have to leave the comfort of your home. You can also opt into something called iSettle, which gives HCAD the option to offer you a settlement via online. Once you've submitted your protest and you may have even uploaded some evidence, we can provide that information. We can offer you a settlement if you opt for that. However, if you don't opt for the iSettle, but simply iFile or submit your form, you can also do something called an informal hearing. That informal hearing is where you can meet one-on-one with an appraiser. You can do that virtually. We'll schedule that hearing virtually with an appraiser, or you can come into the HCAD office. Once you have that informal hearing, if you are not satisfied with the offer or we are unable to make you an offer, you can go to what's called the formal hearing. The formal hearing is the one that you hear a lot about in terms of going before the Appraisal Review Board, which is basically a group of Harris County citizens, just like you, who sit and listen to your protest, your side, and then listen to HCAD's side, and then they make that decision in terms of what your reduction might be. You have the option to do that with a 3-member panel, or you can opt for just one person to sit in and listen to those. And then, of course, if you are not satisfied with the formal ARB's decision, you also have other options, which include arbitration. So those are some things to keep in mind as options when you do file a protest. So kind of a little bit more about, if you just a reminder for next year, or if you're waiting on your hearing for this year still. The HCAD evidence, you want to say, well, HCAD, how do I know how you valued my property? I don't agree with it, but I don't know. I have that information. That's why we tell people to go ahead and file that protest. It doesn't cost anything to file it. It doesn't cost you anything if you prefer not to go through with it. But here's why you may want to file it. Because state confidentiality laws in Texas, we cannot provide you with the information that we use to value your home unless you file that protest. And then once you file that protest, that triggers our that gives us permission to provide you with that information that we've used. You may take a look at that. Once you see it, you may say, yeah, well, maybe HCAD, I guess you got it right, and I don't need to protest. But if you still want to protest, it gives you the opportunity to go, well, now I know what information I need to provide, because when you get that information, that packet of information is going to include the sales that we have in your immediate neighborhood, as well as sales in surrounding neighborhoods. And then you're also going to see some maps that sort of put those sales into perspective in terms of where they are versus where your home is. And then other additional points that we use in terms of determining your value. Just to remember, we cannot give you that information by law unless you file that protest. And you usually get that within 14 days or often sooner before your hearing is scheduled. So just quick quick tips on preparing if you're preparing for your protest next year or even this year. Again, important to remember that the protests are going to be based on market value, not the appraised value, but the market value. And then a few helpful tips here is that you've actually seen it. You've gathered some comps that we may not have, that could be important, and you've documented your property issues. Make sure you file that before the deadline, which is usually May 15th. And then you've gone through the informal hearing and then hopefully you got some relief at either the informal hearing or your ARB hearing. So a little bit about the ARB, or their appraisal review board, the formal hearing process. They do have a limited time in terms of because we have so many protests here within Harris County. Be sure to come prepared. And what do we recommend? The best way to come prepared is to organize your evidence in the same order as you want to make your main points. Because you want to make those points, and you want to make sure that you have the opportunity to present those points. Bring copies of your evidence, and you might want to, if you're in an actual hearing with three people, with three ARB members, then that means you're going to want to bring copies for those three ARB members, as well as the HCAT appraiser that's going to be in there, so that you and as well as a copy for yourself, so that everyone can be looking at the same information as you go through making your points. And that's something we recommend, just to make sure that you have the time to present all of the information that you would like to. So that's the protest process and the appraisal system in a nutshell. One thing I do want to add, some people say it's important to pay attention to the deadlines, because we do this each year. You want to make sure, and there are certain deadlines to follow. Just want to keep in mind a little bit, here's about the appraisal calendar as far as HCAT is concerned. Again, January the 1st is the date of appraisal. May 15th is usually the protest deadline, but if you could get yours later than mid-April, in which case you always have 30 days from the date of the notice on the protest form, on that annual value notice, to file your protest. So it's either going to be May 15th or 30 days from the date of the notice. I did mention one of the reasons it's so important to kind of make sure, I thought it was important to kind of throw in this little fact that one of the reasons this is an especially busy time of year here at HCAT is because of the number of protests that we do have in Harris County. For instance, this year, currently, so far, there have been 569,000 protests filed. So we go through each of those for 2026, and that number has increased from 534 protests that were filed in 2025. So that's why it's important to try to make sure you want to get those protests in, and want to make sure that you come to the hearings, you're able to come to your scheduled hearing. Then, of course, in October and November, once we've certified and handed over those tax rolls to the jurisdictions, they set their rates. Then the bills are going to go out, usually from the tax assessor collector here in Harris County. The biggest is actually the Harris County tax assessor collector, where they mail out those tax bills usually in an October and November timeframe. And then, of course, they're due upon receipt. However, if they're not paid by January the 31st, on February the 1st, they become delinquent, and penalties and interest may accrue. So on to the next important piece of what you need to know as a property owner here in Harris County is exemptions. We are constantly trying to provide information to people who may not be aware. Believe it or not, there's still a significant number of people in Harris County that do not understand that exemptions are important. The best way and the most important way to save money on your property taxes. So what are some of the most common exemptions for you as a property owner, homeowner here in Harris County? There's the general resident homestead, the over 65. There is a disability exemption. There's something called an over 55 surviving spouse exemption. There are various exemptions for disabled veterans, and then some other service-related exemptions as well. And those are primarily we're talking about for homeowners. The general resident homestead exemption is simple. If you own and occupy the home as your primary residence, then you would qualify for that. We only require certain documentation, of course, filling out the form that we have on our website, as well as proof of ownership. Obviously, the property has to be in your name. And then we do require that you provide us with your driver's license or a state issued ID where the address matches that of the property that for which you're applying for the exemption. The most important thing that this exemption gives you is a 10% appraisal increase cap. If you're in a time where we've recently lived through a time when we've seen property values in certain areas rise as much as 15, 20, 25% in 1 year. Thankfully, the market's kind of slowed down a little bit on that. But for during those years, that protected those folks from their appraisal going up more than 10% on their appraised value because that cap was in place. The other thing that all property owners in Texas get for having that general resident homestead exemption is $140,000 school tax exemption. Basically, you do not pay taxes on that first $140,000 of value on your home. There may be and depending on where you live, there may be other exemptions offered by various jurisdictions which you pay to. Obviously, the city of Houston offers an exemption, as well as Harris County and some of your other special districts, maybe your community college. Or, and again, some school districts may even offer more than that $140,000. The over 65 disability exemption is over 65 and the disability exemption are provide pretty much the same benefits. You qualify for that if you're turning 65 this year, even if it's on December 30th, you will get that exemption for the entire year of 2026. So whenever you file that exemption, when you turn 65, you can get it for that year. The exemption department does ask that you wait within 30 days or so of your birthday, to file for that exemption, simply because it provides them with the most current information. If you file it in January and your birthday is not until November, well, things could change between that time, and they're gonna really want to make sure, look closely at it again. So it actually saves you time to do it for within 30 days of when you turn 65. And the disability exemption pretty much is going to provide the same benefits as the over 65. Let's look at those. Some of the most common ones. The you're going to get an additional $60,000 exemption for your school taxes. And then, of course, the school taxes, whatever you paid that year for your school taxes, is going to be frozen at that amount. So in other words, for an over 65, you get to a $200,000 exemption. You already have as the general resident homestead exemption, you already have that $140,000. The over 65 is going to add an additional $60,000 to that. So you want to make sure that you get that. You're also going to be eligible for something called tax deferral, and you can pay taxes in installments without penalties. My colleague Shay from the Tax Assessor Collector's Office is going to describe that in a little more detail in just a few minutes. And you get other special payment options as well from the Tax Assessor Collector. The over 55 surviving spouse simply means that if your deceased spouse died in a year in which they were able to they were eligible for that over 65 or disability exemption, and they passed away, as long as you are 55 years of age or older on the date of your spouse's death, you can receive receive or continue all of the over 65 exemption benefits that they had already qualified for. And then there are certain veterans exemptions. There are a number of those. Total veterans exemption or surviving spouse of a veteran. There's a partially disabled veteran exemption that's based on percentage of their disability. There's something called a surviving spouse of a veteran or first responder killed in the line of duty. And then there's partially disabled veterans who have donated residences, or same for their surviving spouses. Now, the veterans exemptions are a little bit more detailed, and I will say that if you are interested or you need to know more information about those, you can call HCAD, and there is a special line dedicated to simply providing information about veterans exemptions. The immediate resident homestead exemption. I don't know how many of you out there are maybe listening because you're planning to purchase a home. So this is something important for you to remember. It has to do with, remember I said, you'll recall that I said January 1st is typically the date of when HCAD values property. That's the date we set the appraisal upon. Well, it used to be because of that, if you bought a home, say in May, you weren't eligible to start your exemption until the following January. Well, a few years ago, the legislature passed a law that changed all that, and you can now, if you're buying a new home where there was no previous exemption, or a home where the previous owner had no exemptions, maybe it was a rental property, then you can qualify for your general resident homestead exemption on a prorated basis, depending on the month that you moved in. It is important that you apply for it before the first anniversary of the date you acquired the property. Otherwise, you've lost the opportunity to save taxes on those months that you lived in it. If the previous homeowner had no exemptions, or the house was never occupied, as I said before, in new construction, that's when you would get that first year of a prorated exemption. So if you moved in April, then you would get 8 months of that year's worth of exemption. If you and then the second year is when you would establish your cap eligibility base year, and then you would receive it generally for the full year. But it's important to remember that's a pretty good break. If you are moving into a new home, you want to take advantage of that immediate resident homestead exemption. So moving on from the immediate resident homestead exemption for you new homeowners to something called the heirship exemption. Now, it's a part of the exemption process, but it's an important piece for people who may be living in important to know for people who may be living in a deceased relative's home, or if they're living in or have an interest in an heir's property. And what does that refer to? It's basically land or the homes that have passed down and that don't have a clear title, and maybe parents died and the home is left to 4 siblings. Well, in the past, it has been very hard, improbable for one person to receive that 100% exemption, because they only owned, let's say, 4 siblings. They only owned 25%. They had a 25% ownership interest. Now, if they are living in the home, but other relatives still own that interest, they can apply for that 100% exemption. And it does not affect, it's important to remember, it doesn't affect any of the ownership rights of the other heirs. It simply gives that person living in a home where there is no clear title, because there are a number of heirs, it gives them the opportunity to have the same savings, because obviously they're living there, they're taking care of the property, so they get that 100% ownership exemption. And how do they do that? Simply on our exemption application on section 3, if ask that question, if is this a property for which an heir uh, uh, is the property for which this application submitted an heir property? If you check yes on that and you check yes on the next question, do other heirs property owners occupy the property? Then that signals that instructs you to do certain things which we can then provide you with that exemption. And basically it sort of describes what you need: affidavit establishing your ownership interest in the property. You need to submit a death certificate of the prior owner. We need a copy of the most recent utility bill. People ask why. That simply establishes that the home is being lived in. And then any court records that you can provide that relate to your ownership interest in the property. Now, when you get ready to fill this out, if you find it confusing, I highly recommend and hope you would give our exemptions folks a call. They will be more than happy to walk you through the process so that you can get that heirship exemption. So I mentioned before, there are a number of other exemptions out there that are available. Perhaps you aren't sure that of whether or not you when you got it, what type of exemption, especially if we're talking about veterans exemptions or something similar. We now have on our website a sort of a questionnaire. We call it the exemption wizard, but it can help you determine if you're eligible for exemptions and which ones you are eligible for. So that's found on our website. I think it's probably in a prominent spot, or it was on our front page, where you can go and click on it, answer a set of questions, pardon me, and then it'll tell you which exemptions you should apply for. So in submitting your application, we do recommend that you submit everything at once that you're asked to, because we try to get those provided and sent out and processed and placed on your account within 60 to 90 days. However, if you don't submit everything, we've then that adds another month or two to the delay. So please do provide everything. People, and one thing I will want to remind folks of, because this happens a lot, is if the property is in the name of a married couple, please make sure you submit driver's license for both if you both have them. And again, the address on those licenses does need to match that of the property. If you are still a little bit nervous about or not sure about filling it out, there is a how-to video on the website as well that can walk you through completing the application as you actually fill it out. One additional thing I do want to also mention, and this is important for people who may be scratching their head now saying, I think I have any exemptions, I'm pretty sure I do, or oh, maybe I just moved into this property and I inherited it. What do I need to do to make sure the exemptions that I qualify are on the property and not the previous owner's exemptions? So each year we send out this annual exemptions confirmation card to help you, to remind you of that, and to just make sure the exemptions that we do have on the property are still correct. These are usually sent out in December or early January to those folks with existing exemptions. So that's your opportunity to just double check that the exemptions are correct that we have on the property. If they aren't, then please do contact us and make sure that we get those corrected, because you don't want to end up having to pay back taxes on property, because it will eventually be discovered through our vendor process that you are actually don't or benefiting from exemptions for which you were not eligible, and you may be back billed for taxes for those years. So just make sure that when you see this card, everything is right. Just throw it in the drawer. If you don't recall receiving it, it's important to remember that these are not forwarded by the post office. If they are not picked up at that location, then they will be sent back to HCAT, in which case it may trigger us to do further investigation in terms of whether or not that property owner still lives there. And if we can determine that, those exemptions can eventually roll off. So just a note that helps you make sure that those exemptions continue each year. So that's my presentation. I'm gonna stick around for questions as well as Tawana and Ania and Herman on the call. I do appreciate everyone listening. This is where you can contact us. Again, we're out on the Northwest Freeway at the Hollister Tidwell exit. However, it's very easy to give us a call, or we actually have a lot of helpful information on our website at www.hcad.org, or you can go online to our Contact Us form that you see here, hcad.org/contact-us-form. So those are some of the easiest ways that you can get information from us. Feel free to do so. That's what we are here for. And I appreciate you all taking the time to join us today. And again, please feel free to answer any questions that you may have regarding HCAD and the property tax process. Now I'm going to turn it over to my colleague down at the tax office, Shay. Please take it away.
Thank you, Miss Mabel. All right, I'm going to go ahead and get my screen up here. Bear with me one quick second.
Okay. And while Shay's bringing up her screen, I just wanted to just kind of reiterate to everybody the links for the different resources and the sites for the videos and forms and things like that Miss Mabel just went over. They will be included in the email that I send out when I send out this recording as well. So if you guys didn't get the link or didn't get to see where it was, don't worry about it. You'll get it. Okay.
Awesome. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes, ma'am.
Fantastic. All right. So as I mentioned earlier, my name is Shay Pinkowski, and I am here with the office of Annette Ramirez, who is our Harris County Tax Assessor Collector. I'm going to go ahead and jump right into it, but just as a brief overview of what all the Harris County Tax Office does, aside from collecting property taxes and sending out those statements every year, we also register voters for Harris County voting, along with providing necessary vehicle services. So we do the registration stickers for vehicles, new titles for new vehicles, or folks that are just coming into Texas and are new to that process, and transfers of titles from one person to another, whether it's by a sale or by a gift. So we do a whole lot of other processes aside from our usual day-to-day property taxes. But just so you're aware, if you ever see our name on something that's not property taxes, it's more than likely going to be one of those things. So the property tax life cycle was what we did speak about it a bit in Ms. Mabel's presentation, but essentially this is a process that goes on all year round, and it continues to go as the years go past. So right now, we just finished up the appraisal phase, which is when the appraisal district will go and they'll appraise the value of your property. The next phase is the equalization phase, which is mostly underway / done with coming up here at the end of July, and that's where most property owners will go and actually protest the property tax values that the appraisal district has set forth. The assessment phase is the following section, which is something that's going to be coming up here pretty soon. And that's where all of the governing body, the jurisdictions that collect property taxes for their services, begin to determine what their tax rates are. Now, that process does take quite some time. There's a lot of budgeting and planning that needs to go into it in order for them to have the correct values of how much they need in order to function, which then details how much of that property value needs to be taxed, and then, that property tax value is how they determine how much you get collected on for your property taxes. So that's the next phase after this. It should be over in around October. And then the final phase for that cycle is the collection phase. That's when our office here at the Harris County Tax Office will go. We will send you your statement, usually beginning in November, and we collect your property taxes beginning, in November. Once you receive your bill, you're able to make that payment, but typically that's due by January 31st. And then we continue to collect ongoing delinquent payments until, the foreseeable future, until they're paid. But we refer to it until June because at the end of June is when we normally would hand that over to collection agencies. So that's how the process goes in terms of what happens, where are we in the process, what is going on with property taxes. We're currently in that equalization phase and moving into that assessment phase. Calculating your tax bill. I mentioned the tax rates set by the jurisdictions, and that's one of those digits, those numbers that we are required to have in order to be able to calculate your property taxes correctly. So in order to give you an amount due for your taxes, we are requiring of the appraisal district the tax value, which is determined by that appraisal district and any protests that happen. The tax rates, which are determined by the jurisdictions that collect property taxes on your property. And that is how we are able to calculate your tax bill. Now, the calculations can get a little bit more complicated depending on how the exemptions are placed and if you have exemptions on the property, any freezes, things of that nature can influence how much your property taxes are collected on. But this is essentially the bare bones calculation of how that happens. There have been quite a few property tax law changes recently, including the school's exemption for your ISD schooling increasing from $100,000 to $140,000 if you have that homestead exemption for your school. Your over 65 or disabled homestead exemption went up as well from $10,000 to $60,000. We had temporary exemptions for improvement to residences that are destroyed in the fire or in fires, which is coming up this next upcoming year, as well as increases in exemptions for business personal property and expanding qualifications that were previously existing for surviving spouses of veterans whose passing is service related. So there are quite a few changes, and they're always ongoing. So these were the most recent from November this past year. But of course, every year we get a new set of rules, we get a new set of regulations, and the state is constantly trying to add more exemptions and ability for folks to find it easier to pay their property taxes. So we'll see what this year brings us, and we'll update you as soon as we know. But for those who are not quite aware of how much an exemption can change the value of your property, property values with exemptions are reduced drastically. So the property taxes are significantly lower for a property with, say, for instance, a value of $400,000. Without any exemptions, could be somewhere in the realm of $8,500. Versus with the homestead, you would end up paying closer to $5,500. And with the over 65 and a homestead, it can get reduced even further to somewhere in the realm of $1,516. Alternatively, on a property that is lowered, that's value is lower, so something in the realm of $250,000, which is approximately average for Harris County. Without any exemptions, you would see a property tax bill of $5,000, a little over $5,000. With a homestead, you would see something a little over the realm of $3,000. And with over 65 and homestead exemptions placed on that property, you would see a bill closer to $71.63. So you can see the drastic change as it goes on. If you are not already receiving an exemption that you are applicable for, I do always recommend that you are maintaining on top of the exemptions that you're applicable for and verifying that information every year. But it can go up a significant amount, so make sure that you're aware of these changes and that you are aware that your property is under these exemptions if they're applicable to it. Tax limitations. Ms. Mabel mentioned this earlier, but to go into it in detail a little further, tax limitations are also referred to commonly as a tax ceiling or a tax freeze. And what it does essentially is it limits the taxable amount that we are able to collect on your school taxes, and some other jurisdictions have it as well. But this is for folks who are over the age of 65 and their resident homestead with the over 65 exemption. And as I mentioned before, it limits how much we are able to collect. So say, for instance, the year you turn 65 and have those exemptions placed onto your property, that's the limit for how much property taxes you would pay. So if that first year that you have that exemption, you paid $300 for your school taxes, just on school taxes, the following year, even if the value dictates that you would pay more in property taxes than $300, say the value of your property went up, you would still be frozen at that amount of $300. Now, the reason I don't like to refer to it as a tax freeze, I prefer a tax ceiling, is because if the value gets reduced for whatever reason, you downgraded your home, you made it smaller, you sold a piece of that land, the property tax ceiling limits how much we can collect to $300. However, if it's lesser value by the calculation, so if the property value gets decreased and you still have those exemptions in place, that ceiling would then reflect the smaller value, so you would pay less than what your ceiling was. But that ceiling is essentially where it stops. That's where we are limited to collect on, and that stays on the property so long as there aren't any changes made drastically to increase the value of your property. Say, adding tracts of land or building new property on that same existing property. Those are some instances in which that ceiling might be changed, but typically it stays about the same. And that is automatic. It's not something you have to apply for. It's automatically calculated into your statement. A tax deferral is another option that we have available, but this is something that you have to apply for. And tax deferrals are applied for through the Harris Central Appraisal District, but the purpose of that deferral is to postpone your taxes, meaning these taxes are still due. The amounts that we would normally collect on are still applicable and they are still due to your account. However, having that tax deferral on the account allows you to postpone your taxes, meaning it gives you additional time in which to pay those property taxes. The benefit of the tax deferral is, aside from having additional time to pay, you have a much reduced interest on your property taxes. So typically, penalty and interest accrues on your property by month, and it accrues at a rate beginning at 7% in February. The following month in March, it goes up to 9%. The month after goes up to 11%, and it continues to increase by 1% for penalty and 1% for interest per month. Now, with a tax deferral, you don't pay a penalty. You do pay an interest, but that interest is locked at 5% per year. So that 5% per year is is the only thing that would be applied to those unpaid taxes on your tax deferral. And that is ongoing so long as you are living and residing in that property. This is only applicable for, again, homesteads for over 65 exemptions, homesteads for disabled homeowners, or homesteads for disabled veterans. It is very important to note that if you are going to request for a tax deferral to be placed on your account, that you make sure that your heirs are aware of the deferral, because whenever that deferral ends, say you sell the property, say unfortunately the owner passes away, all those taxes that are deferred are still due. You have 181 days from the date in which that deferral comes off to pay with that deferred rate of 5% per year. But after the 181 days, you are required to pay with normal penalty and interest as it would have accrued without the deferral. So it's always best to be informed and to make sure that you're letting everyone know that this account is under a deferral, that you are what your process is on making payments, whether you're just letting it stay deferred and not making any payments whatsoever, or whether it's deferred and you're continuing to make payments, that's perfectly acceptable also. But it's good to make sure that everyone is informed so as to not catch folks off guard, because that 5% interest may not seem like a very large difference, but when you look at the numbers themselves, you can really see how penalty and interest increases and how much of a difference that makes over time. There's an important note here that if you are considering to have your account deferred, please make sure that you consult with a mortgage company if you are currently under an escrow. So if you're still making payments to your home, if you took out a second mortgage, if there is another company or persons with a vested interest in the property, they may not allow you to have the deferral while maintaining that mortgage. Or rather, they would still continue to collect taxes on your behalf and pay those taxes on your behalf, even if there is a deferral, because they have a vested interest in that property as well. So just make sure that you're aware and that you're making these questions, that you're asking these questions and verifying that information before you go through the process of applying for it. That went too far. There it goes. Okay. And finally, the option that we have for quarterly payment plans is something that is also applicable to homesteads on those over the age of 65, disabled homeowners, disabled veterans, or their surviving spouses on their homestead. Now, with quarterly payments, you are not required to pay penalty or interest so long as those payments are made timely. This can go towards your unpaid taxes for that year, and the due dates are typically by the end of January, by the end of March, by the end of May, and by the end of July. So these taxes are essentially your year's amount due. Your tax levy is split into 4 equal payments, and you would pay one of those 4 equal payments during each of these due dates. You do have to be approved for this, so your exemption has to be on your account, and you do have to request that information. It's not automatic, but you can contact our office, or you can go into a branch office to request that information and to verify that you're eligible for it with our office directly. Now, aside from the options that are provided to folks who have a homestead and over 65, disabled or disabled veterans, we also have options that are available for those who just have a homestead or for those who own property that are not homesteads. So this would go towards business personal property. This would go towards rental properties that you might have. If you are the renter and you're required to pay the property taxes per your contract with the owner, this would be applicable to you as well. And what that does is it allows you time in which to pay your delinquent property taxes. Now, for homesteads, you would still have a penalty and interest fees that are due included into that payment agreement. However, that penalty fee would be frozen at the month in which you create that agreement. So, as I mentioned earlier, if you are due in January and you don't create your payment agreement until July because it has to be delinquent in order for this to apply, it freezes at that 7%, and then you just get your interest tacked on, as opposed to non-homestead property, which get assessed the normal penalty and interest fees. But both of these payment plans help you do is avoid additional collection attorney's fees that would normally be tacked on whenever we have to turn over the accounts to our attorneys for collections. So it is very helpful. It is something that I recommend. If it's a very good planning tool in order for you to be able to continue to make payments to your property taxes and remain aware of what the status is on your property. And this can be done either online. You can contact our office directly via the phone number there. Go to a branch office and speak to representatives in any of our locations as well. So these plans can range from 12 to 36 months. And if you have previous year's delinquents as well, you're still able to create those payment agreements at this time in order to make sure that you're making that attempt to paying off those property taxes. Our system has received a new website this year. We've just recently started using it at the beginning of the year. But one of these really great opportunities that it has presented to us is the ability to have prepayments, which is not something that we had done previously on the scale that we are doing it now. But you are able to create prepayments through our website or in our branch offices or by phone, same as you would for our normal payment agreements. You can also make your secure payments online, set up due date reminders if you have an account opened on our website, and view your receipts. So super convenient, super easy, and it's a lot quicker than it was previously. We do have our QR code here on the screen if you'd like to take a screenshot and then check it later. Also, our website is there at the bottom if that's something you would be interested in. And of course, all of this will be at the end of the presentation as well. But our new system might look a little different. I do believe that it is cleaner and it makes it transition quite easy. Payment options include making payments online, as I mentioned. You can still mail in your payments so long as you are mailing them in to us in the form of a cashier's check or a money order or a personal check to our P.O. Box here listed 4622. You're able to make payments by phone through our automated phone system. Or you can come in person, of course, and make your payments in a branch office directly. And that can be through cash, card, check, any of the above. Now, just a quick advisory to everyone that you are required to pay a 2.4% fee when it comes to paying with a card. That's either online, by phone, or in person. There is no fee for using a check, and e-check payments, which are electronic payments available online, are a 50% fee. And of course, there's no fee for paying in cash. There's no fee for using an actual check in person. Our office is committed to making your tax burden lighter. Now, we may not be able to reduce the taxes, take away fees, that sort of thing. But what we are able to do is we're able to make the process easier for you. We're able to offer you multiple options of how to pay, as well as giving the option of prepayments now, or by doing these workshops, which help to inform the public of all of the different changes that are going on, answering any questions, and keeping everyone informed. We also offer e-bills, which is something that you can receive your statement in an email format instead of waiting for it to come to you in the mail. And of course, all of your statements are available online as soon as they become available to us. So it is always quicker to check online. But we are actively attempting to make the process easier, and we are here to help you in whatever questions you might have when it comes to your property taxes. We are here to help. If you have any questions, if you're unsure of something, or if your situation requires some additional care, please feel free to give us a call, send us an email, or come into one of our branch offices to ask for assistance. I've put up our contact information here on the presentation, and our QR code is there as well. But I am going to go ahead and turn it over to Ms. Nia, and she can give us our closing statements and go over any questions that might have been put into the chat.
All right. Well, thank you very much, both of you guys. My computer, unfortunately, kind of junked out on me earlier, so I had to log back in. So if there were any questions prior to this one, then I do not see them. I cannot go back and see them.
Oh no.
There
I
was
can go
one
over
that
it.
says the one that about the best protest for property owners. Do you have that? Anything before that?
Yes, I have one, and that was actually a question for Otto. But it was I had a friend pass away in March. What documents does a family need to transfer the title for a car to their name or the phone number? So that same phone number that I provided in my presentation, the 713-274-8000 is our call center, and they are able to assist with property tax questions as well as automobile questions, and this would be considered an automobile question. I know generally that you are required to fill out a Form 130U along with having the physical title itself that is being transferred over. The circumstances kind of depend on who is transferring the title over into the new owner's name. So whether it's the spouse of the deceased or the child or, extended family, the circumstances differ a little bit. So it's always best to call and ask for that expert's information. So I don't want to give you information that is incorrect. So I would recommend that you give that number a call. And I'll go ahead and type that into the chat as well in case someone else needs it. Let's see.
And
Other than
verify
that,
airship information as well. We
yeah.
don't want to kind of get into the middle of, well, he wanted me to have it. No, I'm supposed to have it, that kind of thing. So
Yeah,
be careful
exactly.
of that. Yeah. Be careful of that.
Be cautious, be aware.
Friend that passed away. What is the best method of protest by property owners or through a third-party company on behalf of us, and the interim success in terms of success rate? Should you protest your own property taxes or use a third-party company, Miss Mabel?
I'm gonna let Herman answer that, because he's, uh, our property division professional and appraiser that sits in on a lot of those hearings. So Herman, are you still on?
Yes, I'm here.
So I know you guys often have, and this is an opinion because we don't recommend, we're not here to sell you on one or the other, but we're just talking from our HCAT experience. So Herman, you want to take it?
Yes, absolutely. So when it comes to doing your protest, like Ms. Maven said, it is an opinion of ours. It's up to you whether you want to hire one of the agencies that would represent your account for you. As an appraiser, my experience says that it is best for you yourself to come in and speak with an appraiser about your property because you know your property better than anyone else. If you hire an agency, the possibility of you not being able to get all the information to the agent and them trying to represent your account is always an issue. But you have access to your account. You know what's going on to your property. You know the damages and the concerns that you have. So it's always best for you to, in my opinion, is always best for the property owner to just come in personally, whether that's remotely or in person, and represent their account themselves.
Okay.
Okay. Um, I think that's all that I see in here. And yes, a copy of the recording will go out to everyone that have registered along with the links that I had mentioned before. Let's see if there's anything else. So there was all the questions that I had that were in the chat, and I don't see any that are online. However, Ms. Mabel, I do want to kind of reiterate some of the questions that we typically get. Do exemptions have to be renewed every year?
Hi, it's Tawana.
Oh,
As
Tawana.
far as for exemptions needing to be renewed every year, no, as long as you still own and occupy your property, then your exemptions will not fall off of the account. The only time something of that nature happens is if we send you, because every year we send a postcard to your property advising you that these are the exemptions that you had on your property last year, and then the on the other side of the first on the first side of the card, it gives you your account number, your property address, and which exemptions that, well, I'm sorry, the address that we mailed it to, the property itself, and the account number. And then on the other side of that postcard, it lets you know that these are the exemptions that you had for the prior tax year, and these are the same exemptions that you're going to have for this year, unless something has changed. It instructs the property owner to give us a call if there's been some type of change. Um, um, but otherwise, no, the exemptions stay on the account.
Okay.
And to Wana's point, there might actually be some confusion among folks who are from Texas because the legislature a couple of years ago passed a law that required chief appraisers in each county to recertify people being eligible for exemptions every 5 years. They had go to recertify. Some of that may be happening in other counties in Texas because they didn't give any specific procedure for it. They just said this had to happen. So HCAT has all along been sending out those confirmation cards annually. So it was determined that we meet that criteria because we've been sending out those confirmation cards. So I just wanted to clarify, it could be different in another county, how that's done.
I asked about that again because I just saw, and I hardly ever go on TikTok, and this is why I hardly ever go on TikTok, but I saw them talking about the property tax card at recertification. Your exemption is going to fall off. Make sure you recertify every 3 to 5 years. Otherwise, you're going to lose your property tax exemptions. I'm like, that is not accurate. Like, why are y'all telling people
They are
that?
scaring our
That
property
just
owners.
exactly. It's like otherwise, contact us and we can make sure, please be careful when you guys are on social media. That's all I could say. And verify your sources of information before you just kind of randomly go out there and do what they're telling you to do on social media. Please do that. Uh,
Stay informed.
my other question that I want to reiterate is for you, Shay, about people paying past due property tax bills. Does that make them an owner if they pay somebody's property taxes that are delinquent?
No. So paying property taxes does not necessarily mean you are the owner. Now, owners are required to pay their property taxes, yes. But if you have a property adjacent to yours that is derelict, they're not paying their taxes, no one lives there, it's abandoned, XYZ, and you decide, I'm going to pay their property taxes so that I can acquire that property, that's not what's going to happen. Nothing is going to happen with that because in order to acquire the property, you need to go through the process of having that deed transferred into your name. Paying those property taxes just pays the property taxes. It ensures that it cannot go to tax sale. It ensures that we cannot have the state become owners of the property because the property taxes are being paid. And you're essentially just doing a nice thing for a neighbor that you've never seen nor heard of. So, please make sure you're doing your research. Paying property taxes does not make you the owner of the property, just makes the property paid off or make sure that the taxes are paid on the property. There is a process of going through with delinquent taxes. So, property taxes that are delinquent for, however long, can go into tax sale and, the state can become owners of the property and, sell that property to pay off property tax debts. But you paying those property taxes does not make you the owner.
So be leery of those folks again on social media. Hey, come and join us at this hotel. We'll give you a free lunch and show you how to buy or how to get property tax or tax lien properties and purchase, and don't do it. That's all I can say. Don't do it. Okay. Um, how do we get comparable sales value, market values of the neighborhood we protested through a third party for the first time this year?
So if you look on the back of your notice that you receive, there is a section for inspection of evidence. Your evidence will be available for you to research 14 days prior to your hearing. That will allow you to see all the comparables that HCAD has used, all the sales that we identify with in your market area, in your neighborhood, all the equity properties, at least 5 equity properties, uh, and how they're being valued. It gives you the breakdown of what we have on your account. And if anything is incorrect, you could bring that up to the appraiser when you have your hearing. If you have hired a representative, they should have this information because they have access to it as well. But once again, they also may research and find additional information that they feel they could use as well to help represent your account.
Okay. If we purchased a property in December 2024, we paid all property taxes for 2025. Our purchase price is way lower than the property appraised value in 2025. Can we request a credit under the recording error category?
So this is a bit of a valuation question from what I'm understanding. Now, as far as the value of the property itself, that's something that the appraisal district would have to go off of. So it's going to depend on how they appraise the property. As far as credits go, because you pay property taxes to the Harris County Tax Office, our office can't make those changes to taxes due until we receive corrections from the appraisal district. So if the value doesn't change based off of that purchase price, we aren't able to issue a credit or a refund for any believed overpayments on that account. So I'm going to pass it along to the appraisal district for questions on the valuation and whether or not that changes anything. But as far as our office is concerned, unless the value changes on the appraisal district side, we don't refund for believed differences in value.
In addition to that, it also depends on what was in your closing statement when you actually purchased your property in December, because more than likely, since you weren't the owner for the entire year, you should have gotten a credit from the previous seller for the total of all of the taxes that were due for 2024 that were paid in 2025. So
Yeah, it
you, in
depends.
essence, shouldn't have overpaid or shouldn't have paid. The previous seller did. So
It kind of depends. Sometimes it's included in their closing costs and you'll get a credit to your total balance of how much you're paying the property for. So you would still be responsible for paying the taxes. They would have just provided that as a discount to your total amount due, and you're still responsible for those taxes.
yeah, but if
as
they
the
received the
owner,
credit, then that's a credit that came from the seller for the previous year. So the seller
yeah,
the previous seller still in actuality paid all of the taxes for 2024, or pretty much all
yeah,
of the
but they paid
taxes
it
for
to you.
2024.
Yeah,
But
they
they
would have
paid it
paid
to
it to the
you, and then you
buyer, not to the
correct,
taxes. Yes.
correct.
And for someone who actually is being overvalued based on what they paid on the property, remember you set the market value
When you
based on
bought
what
it.
you paid for the property. So
Hmm.
difference there and it's higher. You can always bring in your closing statement with when you file with your hearing document, with your hearing evidence.
Hmm.
I remember in regards to this particular scenario in December 2024, each year stands on its own. So we will be valuing this one as of January 1, 2025. So your 2024 sale would have been good only for January 1, 2025. We're valuing now as of January 1, 2026. So now we're looking at what the market was doing in the year 2025.
And if you're using a third party company, can you go back and kind of intervene in that when you're using a third party company already anyway? Or how does that work? Or what? Or why are you paying a third party company if you're doing the research and all of the comps and things like that? That's what they're supposed to be doing for you.
A lot of times, what I've heard from property owners is it's just a time issue. They don't have the time to come in, to take off work, to come in and do the formals or informal hearings. So so they hire the third party company, and you're correct. My understanding of what the agencies should be doing is doing the research, but they do reach out to the property owner to receive as much information as they can to try to assist with their potential value adjustment. As far as the comps and things of that nature are considered. Most of the companies that we deal with, they bring in some comps. They may use our own comps that HCAD has provided. The difference is the adjustments that are made to each property to meet the quality of your property, whether that's an increase or a decrease in value. They may use different adjustments, and therefore it may render a different value. So when you come and sit in front of appraiser and say, hey, we're using the same property. Why is your value so much higher? Understand that we are looking at what the adjustments are. We are bound by USPAP, Uniform Standard Appraisal Practices. And so there are certain adjustments that as appraisers, we have to make to each property. Um, and so that very well may be a difference in what you see in a value if we're using the same property.
And Herman, can
Yeah.
you offer a couple of examples when you talk about adjustments? What are we looking at?
Adjustments, if we're in the same neighborhood and let's say your property is a 2000 built home, it's in what you would see on your record. It's a 2000 built home. It's in average condition. When you see that average condition, that's saying because we do mass appraisal, your home is in average condition for the neighborhood. There's nothing about your home that stands out as superior, or there's nothing about your home that shows that it is in a decline. So you are in an average condition for the neighborhood. Your home may have 100% brick. um, you may have 8,000 square feet of land that you're sitting on just for a bare minimum of what the comparables may be. The comparables that sold in your neighborhood, very well, you may have a 1973 built home. It may be 100% frame. Frame quality is less than brick quality. They may have 2,500 square feet of land, or maybe 5,000 to be more comparable, 5,000 square feet of land. So those are the adjustments that we would have to make. Age, size, any differences in condition.
Okay.
When we make those adjustments, that will render a different value. And there is also an adjustment for time. If you see something that says time adjustment, that is saying that in the early part of the year, homes were selling for one value, and at the latter part of the year, closer to the valuation period, homes began selling for another value. Once again, it could be a higher value, it could be a lower value. It may trend up in June to start being higher, and by the time it gets to December or November, December, the value could very well start going down. So those time adjustments will be calculated in that as well.
Oh, good.
Before we go to another one, Miss Regina, I saw you went off mute. Did you have any questions or?
Yes, I do have a question. My apology. I can't type it because I'm driving. So, and I don't know if you've addressed the question in a previous recording. My question is, I was watching one of our local television stations, and I live in Houston, Harris County, and they were advertising one of the local newspapers had a website in which you could, I guess, access and log in to see if your property was worth protesting or something like that. Are you familiar with that?
Yes, believe you're referring to the Houston Chronicle.
Thank you very much, Miss Menifee. I didn't want to advertise.
You want to give a commercial? That's okay. We appreciate that.
Yes, I didn't want to get in trouble for doing that, so thank you very much.
And yeah, and your question was on that?
Are you familiar with the
Yes,
website or
Yeah,
whatever it
yeah.
was that you?
yes. So what's the difference in between going through a channel like that versus hiring a quote unquote professional like what you all were talking about? Because I'm one of those people who's very leery. Y'all could go on their website, and the next thing you know, all of my information is in the dark room.
Mm.
Every time Dick and Harry has access to my personal information. So what's the difference in between my going through the website to see if something like, okay, it's worth protesting versus my going through iFile or HCAD and say, hey, I want to protest my tax.
Well, Herman, you can jump in here if I say something wrong too, but you still gonna have to protest directly through HCAD. I don't know if they may have a portal for you to send in your protest, but it's gonna come to HCAD. And with the Chronicles thing, and it's more of a Hearst corporation, which owns the Chronicle, has started doing this in a number of market areas. They will provide you with some initial information, but you still at some point there's a fee for getting the rest of it taken care of. So, it's kind of like it's almost like whether or not you make that decision using the Chronicle or you decide to go with Ownwell or one of the other tax consultants. So, and as far as your information, I don't know. They should be able to tell you on that site who they're sharing your information with, or you should be able to agree. So I haven't gone through it, so I'm not sure about that part. Herman, did you have anything to add, or it's essentially just another outside consulting agency, but it comes
Your
through
own research.
one of our local newspapers.
Yeah, once again, when you do use those resources, understand that the values that you may see, they may not be adjusted values. And so they're just giving you direct sales. Direct sales, they are good and we utilize them, but we still have to adjust those sales to meet the quality of your home. I.e., the example I was using, if you have a 2,500 square foot home and the sale that you're considering is a 2,000 or 2,300 square foot home, that difference for size has to be adjusted. Uh, that will render typically a higher value. Understanding, once again, we're taking in consideration of age. If it's a 2000 versus a 1970 home, obviously that's an older home to a newer home. Some neighborhoods have more recent homes being built in older neighborhoods. You may have a 2025 built home
Yes.
built in a predominantly 1960s neighborhood. Those type of adjustments will be
Yes.
accounted for and certain adjustments will be put in place. Then that's when you start seeing where you say, well, the comps that you're using are not in my neighborhood, where they're not directly in your neighborhood because they didn't have any 3,000 square foot 2025 built homes built in your neighborhood from the 1960s. So we may have to go a little bit further down the road where they may have homes that are more comparable to suggest what the market for that type of um, home is being sold for. So just to answer your question, just to sum it up,
Uh-huh.
when you use those resources, that's fine to bring those in, but understand once you get to the appraisal district with that information, those resources, those properties that you bring in, they will be adjusted for any differences that may occur to meet the quality of your home. Like I said, whether that's an increase or a decrease in value.
So the appraiser that you mentioned that I do live in one of those homes that was built in the 1960s, but I noticed that they're building homes starting in 2025 newer and like in the back of our subdivision. And then on the other side, you have those 1960 homes in which they're building a whole new home in the backyard. Does that affect your appraisal?
No, that may be very well labeled as a different neighborhood if it's in your backyard. The confusing part for some of these neighborhoods, you could live on one street and the house right behind you could be in a different neighborhood. And so that house right behind you is being used to value homes that are more similar to that property, and the ones in your neighborhood on your street going in a different direction very well are being used to value your property. And so, like I said, when you bring those properties in, that's something that we can make the determination of when we look at it. And that's the difference between coming in person and rather doing it iSettle, which iSettle has been a great help. We do the same thing with the iSettle accounts. If you decided to do that, we still look at the comps. We look at any comps that you provide. And if there's a value adjustment to be made, we make that recommendation to you. And but
Okay.
we would know what neighborhood our analysts, I would like to believe, do a very good job with identifying the neighborhoods and the properties in those neighborhoods that sold if we had a market or not, and how to locate those properties and give a value accordingly. The other thing I did want to mention is when you come to the appraisal district, remember that we are only talking about market value. Your taxable value, that's based on your exemptions that you have on your property. All we're talking about is your market value, what you would be able to sell your property for as of January 1 of whatever year you're protesting, not your taxable value.
Okay, well, one question. This has been very informative.
Thank you.
Very, very. I tell you, I go to these every day, and every time I sign up, I learn something different. One last question, it's a stupid question. What's a comp? And thank you very much for answering my question.
You're welcome. A comp is a comparable. It's comparable in your neighborhood. And like I said, it's a property that we're looking at and we're saying, although there very well may be differences, is very similar in size, age, different characteristics to your property. And so you're saying, okay, this home is the same as mine in one way or the other, and it's sold for less. And so you're bringing that comp in to say, hey, look, this is what the market is indicating. The market is indicating that these properties are selling hypothetically for 200,000 instead of 250,000.
And that was not a stupid question. I guarantee you somebody else that's on this
Not at
call
all.
right now probably didn't know what comps meant either. So please don't feel that way.
Not at all. That is not a stupid question.
Not at all. One last question. I guess this kind of touches on what you just explained, Herman. If we protest the property taxes, is there a problem or any issue when we sell the property?
The only concern that I would have or that I would see having is, once again, we're talking about market value. So if you're saying your home is not marketable at a certain value and you come and you get that market value reduced, and then you turn around and you put it on the market for a higher value, if the buyer is concerned with what HCAD feels about your property, they may look at HCAD's record and say, well, you have it on the market for 275,000, but HCAD only has it valued at 225,000.
Mm-hmm.
And so as the appraisal district, they may give some credence to that. And so that may cause a little conversation between the buyer and the seller as to where the price should
Well,
be.
those numbers. Mm-hmm.
Yes. So that's the only issue that I see. But other than that, nothing else is jumping out at me right away.
I've heard realtors say it is never a problem in reality. And nah, not once upon a time. Once upon a time, there was a big difference, or not huge, but there was a significant difference between the appraised value versus the market value, which is what discounted or which lowered the tax bill. Wait a minute, let me make sure I'm saying this correctly. And Ms. Mabel, you're kind of looking at me and shaking your head, so kind of chime in here. I remember there being a significant difference when it came to protesting the values because of it lowering the tax bill because of the market value, or if I'm not saying it correctly. This was maybe prior to COVID that there was a difference, that market value was different than the tax value. You know what I mean?
Yes, the market value and the appraised value very well may not be the
Be
same.
the same.
Once again, the appraised value is going to be based on your exemptions. Everybody doesn't have the same exemptions. Somebody may have a regular homestead exemption. Your neighbor may have a disability exemption. Your other neighbor may have over 65. So everybody doesn't have those same exemptions. The difference is going to be the 10%. It's going to increase at least 10% each year if you have the exemptions on the property. Your market value is going to increase with whatever the market is doing in your neighborhood. So if your home is worth 250,000 today, as of January 1, 2026, and then all of 26, for whatever reason, the market starts to increase and they start selling homes in your neighborhood for 350,000, your January 26 2027 market value is going to increase to represent something in the range of the 350,000. But your appraised value, which is your taxable value, will only increase 10% from the previous year. So if your market and your appraised value was $250,000 for January 1, 2026, and then the sales start increasing to 350, 400,000, January 27, your market value is going to represent something to say that it should be that you could sell your home for 350 to 400,000, but your appraised value will only increase 10%. And
Because
that's
your
your
appraised,
taxable value.
And that's
exactly.
always been an issue with a lot of people in terms of they're looking at the appraised value. And the appraised value could be based on, like Herman mentioned, a number of things. It also might include how long though that previous owner has had those exemptions in place
Mm-hmm.
versus whether they've had them in place for 15, 20, 30 years versus they just bought the house a couple of years ago. So there are a lot of factors there too.
And you always want that number to be lower because that's the least amount of money you got to pay in property taxes as opposed to something that's higher. So
Right.
yeah,
And
that's
it
why you
could be
protest
that homeowner has protested each year,
if.
gotten a reduction versus their neighbor who did not.
Mm-hmm.
And that's
Okay.
another thing to consider. Understand that each property owner may have a different concern. You may come in as a property owner and say, hey, I have some sales that, reflect the lower value. And so we may very well may be able to adjust your value based on sales. Your neighbor may come in and say, hey, I have some condition issues along with those sales to reflect the lower value. So therefore, now their value may go maybe a little lower because they have condition issues on top of what the market is saying. So the market is suggesting that your value should be lower on top of the fact that you have a leak in your roof that's causing damage to your ceiling. The water's dripping down your wall, is messing up your sheetrock, your foundation is starting to shift a little bit. And so now you have cracks coming up the side of your wall, whereas your home very well may not be experiencing that yet. And so the adjustments that your neighbor received may not be the adjustments that you receive. And so those are things that have to be considered, or I'm not saying that you have to consider, but those are the things that we would consider when we're looking at the comparables as well. When you say, hey, why is my neighbor valued so much lower than me?
And if it's an investment property versus your homestead. If it's an investment
Exactly.
property, you're not going to have all those exemptions on the property like your neighbor may have because that's their homestead.
Exactly.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Herman. Appreciate that. Um, Based upon market inflation, hard to sell for the market value. Sometimes seller may reduce the value if they want to sell quickly. Yes, they can. And then quite the opposite a couple of years ago, where you have all these people that were coming in from out of town that were paying a whole lot more than what their property was actually worth. So to try to now go back and then sell the property that they already overpaid for, then they're not going to recoup that money, or a lot of people are not recouping that money because a couple of years ago it was different from what it is right now. So it just depends. It just depends. Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much. We appreciate all of you for joining us this afternoon. We hope that you all got the information that you intended to receive by sitting in on this presentation today. I want to give a special thanks to Miss Mabel, Mr. Herman, Miss Tawana, Miss Anaya or Ania, or she never spoke up, so I'm not sure. And definitely to Miss Shay and to all of our participants for joining us this afternoon. We hope that you are able to come back and join us for additional presentations. Tomorrow we have our the foreclosure presentation where we're talking about mortgage, home equity line of credit, and reverse mortgage foreclosures. So if you are someone that you know of may be in jeopardy of foreclosure, then you may want to sit in on that presentation, or somebody that you may know that may be experiencing foreclosure. Due to any kind of financial hardship, then please join us for that presentation. Our foreclosure series is kind of like a three-part series. We'll go into property tax foreclosure, HOA foreclosure, and then mortgage foreclosure. So tomorrow's session is the mortgage foreclosure. Also, this Saturday we are having home improvement um, information and resource fair over at the Houston Texans YMCA from 9 to 1. If there are any homeowners that are interested in home improvements or need any information about home improvement options, and how to qualify for various home repair programs and things, how to clear title and making sure that you actually protect your assets with wills or TODs and things of that nature, and also having our inspector. Oh, and an appraiser will be there also to tell you about things that actually adds market value to your home if you're interested in getting some information about adding value to your property with various repairs and improvements. There will be there as well. And then also to give certain maintenance tips. We're in the preparation or in the midst of hurricane season. If you guys need some little tips and quick tidbits and information on where to go for available resources and information about preparing for disasters, then please make sure that you tune in. I don't think we've had too bad of the storms, the hurricanes, the last couple of years, which they're saying it could be,
Let me go knock on some wood real quick before we jinx
yeah,
ourselves.
just to be on the safe side, better to be safe than sorry. And come out and join us for that presentation. That's going to be an in-person session over at the YMCA. So look forward. The month of July, we are pretty much off. We don't really have a whole lot of presentations that are coming, but we are coming back in August with our full a month of service series, and a few more of those are going to be hybrid or even more in person in August, September, some or August, October sometime. So look for us in a neighborhood potentially near you where you guys are going to be if you want to come out and join us in person. So again, thank you all very much. We really appreciate you for being here and continuing to support the month of service collaboration. And on behalf of all of our partners, we hope you all have a wonderful remainder of your day. You all take care of yourselves. You stay safe, and we will see y'all next time.
You too, Nia. Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
so
you, Ms.
much.
Kawhi.